So there is no doubt about it that 2023 was by far the worst year for the Walt Disney Company for multiple reasons out there, not just the fact that they had multiple box office failures, but also the fact that it so happened to have landed on their 100th anniversary year, and that was just the beginning for Bob Iger acting as Disney CEO at the time. Now, given that 2025 is already going through a lot of problems with their upcoming slate of movies and TV shows for next year, that's not really looking good at all, in the least so far. Already Bob Iger, the Disney executives, they are in full panic mode over Snow White 2025 and everything going along with it, including the drama between both Rachel and Gal. Let's get into this. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So, there is one thing that is for sure about Snow White, is that this is yet another disaster for the Walt Disney Company for various, factors that went into that. We have the Rachel Zegler PR disaster, we have the budgeting for this movie, we have all the drama going on behind the scenes, and the 5 failed test screenings, which, by the way, a 6th one is on the horizon to take place once they get everything put together again. But what's interesting about this moving onwards has a lot more to do with Gal Gadot and her overall response toward Rachel Zegler and what's been going on behind the scenes related to these two actresses. Now, what's interesting about this as well is that this is creating more setbacks for Snow White, the live-action remake, which, by the way, already is going to divert from source material from the 1937 film. But let's get into this. Now, on top of everything here, with the Snow White drama only getting worse for those like Bob Iger and the rest of the Disney executives, one major development going on right now has more to do with Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler after more issues recently erupted for the Snow White 2025 film after the Walt Disney Company finally decided to move forward with additional reshoots for the film's third act. Now, specifically the ending, which did terrible in all 5 failed test screenings, one crucial update to the situation going on right now involves how Gal recently had heated arguments and outrage moments behind the scenes with Rachel Zegler after Zegler refused to take part in reshoots where Gal wants to get things moving on the reshoots after finally agreeing with Disney. Now, many argumentative conversations recently took place between both Gal and Rachel, where Gal reportedly labeled Rachel as incompetent, lazy, and troublesome for the production. Now, this came just shortly after the Snow White team had a serious meeting related to the film's reshoots. Already multiple arguments took place between both Gal and Rachel over reshooting the ending for Snow White, where Gal even had a serious conversation with Rachel that was labeled as an argument. This argument consisted of how Gal labeled her as self-absorbed and a narcissist, essentially on set of Snow White 2025, with Gal labeling Rachel as a narcissist multiple times throughout the post-production process. Now, what's interesting about this as well is that this all comes in the wake of Rachel promoting Snow White in the worst way possible on social media through X that deeply offended Gal Gadot. This back-and-forth drama is said to already be snagging and delaying the process by the Disney Company to get things moving ahead for the reshoots related to this movie, as the ending scene is said to be crucial to wrap up production full before March of 2025. Now, this even got to a point where Gal blamed Rachel Zegler for all 5 failed test screenings related to the film and how it's all her fault, essentially, in turn putting Rachel in her place. This drama is not only creating a wide possibility that these reshoots may never happen if the grudge between the two continues, but however, this could also create a loss of millions of dollars if Disney remains stuck with the current ending, since the ending scene is said to be a deal breaker. According to the test screeners, it would actually cause massive walkouts in movie theaters. Now, guys, before I move on, let me just say one thing about this. Now, there is a 6th reshoot, or should I say test screening, before the reshoots that will take place by the middle to the end of this month, and that most certainly is going to fail as well. They made some little revisions here and there with the editing, swapped out a couple of scenes, rearranged some scenes as well. I don't think it's going to change the pacing all that much. I don't think it's going to change the structure of the film all that much. And even if you reshoot this entire ending, which by the way, there's a lot of backlash between Gal, Rachel, and many others. There's a lot of drama going on there. Some people want to move ahead with reshoots, others do not. So that's really a snag right now for the Walt Disney Company, but at the same exact time, like I said before, if they stick with this ending, it's going to create negative word of mouth that it has the worst ending out of all the Disney live-action remakes of the animated classics. So that's one thing that they want to avoid at all costs. If I were Disney, I would just cancel this thing outright. I would call it a day. I would save myself the embarrassment, and I would just lock this up in a vault. I would quote-unquote Batgirl this thing. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Batgirl was a movie that got canceled and never saw the light of day, and actually starred Brendan Fraser, believe it or not, as Firefly. That movie will and never will see the light of day. They should do the same exact thing with Snow White 2025. I don't see why not. However, moving onwards, these arguments that Gal made to Rachel already got to a point where Disney executives got involved and are demanding that the two act friendly in the public eye to create the image that Disney is in good standing for the production of Snow White to improve the marketing campaign of the film. However, Gal's response to Rachel is that she is just too phony to work with. Gal had agreed to reshoots but now doesn't want to work on specific scenes if it includes Rachel in the same room together and wants scenes to be shot somehow separately, as Gal is trying to negotiate on some kind of a deal to work things out behind the scenes with the Disney Company. This in turn is also putting Bob Iger in complete panic mode over the fallout connected to Snow White 2025. And here's the other thing about this movie, is that this movie in particular has a lot of bad things going on for it. Like I mentioned earlier, it diverts away from the source material, it's full of ideology, full of the typical Disney agenda. Basically, they embraced DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The CGI dwarfs were on a budget, that's why they look absolutely horrific in the teaser trailer and what people saw publicly at D23. This is a very interesting series of events that are taking place, and some of which are very unexpected. I don't think I would have ever seen a time where you would have someone like Gal and Rachel Zegler going at it back and forth for weeks on end after what Rachel had done on social media, on X, and her methods of how she promotes Snow White, and among other reasons, right? We know that she's very quote-unquote difficult to work with, very much like Gal Gadot suggested as phony to work with, and that very much matches Rachel Zegler, because that's exactly the type of responses that we have gotten from others out there. But interestingly enough, I mean, the Walt Disney Company likes to double down on their ideology, on their agenda, and it all comes back at them, and they just still complain to this day. They always like to blame the loud minority of the general public that is opposed to stuff like this, but Bob Iger, like I said, he really wants to keep BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street on his side, and he also wants to double down on his agenda. But overall, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.